ready on Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another outdoor setting. It's 8:30. Somebody over there is just starting to use a drill, so I hope that doesn't annoy me, and more importantly you, too much. It's a beautiful Friday morning in Tokyo, 8:30 in the morning. T-shirt weather, I don't know what the temperature is, I have no idea, 15, 16, it's gorgeous. A little bit of a breeze. Okay, enough about the weather. I've had a pretty darn good reading week. I want to tell you all about it. I have one bale that I'm quite exercised about. Oh, here goes the garbage trucks. We'll wait a minute for the garbage trucks to go by. So, yes, sadly, I bailed on this Australian debut novel, Hang Him When He's Not There by Nicholas John Turner. Started out so powerful, and everybody fell asleep at the switch by around the last third of the book. I read 70% and I was just nauseated by how terrible it got. Like, this was nominated for the Republic of Consciousness Prize. I think the author and the editor became unconscious 2/3 of the way through. It just was shitty writing from then on, and I was really disappointed. Because, as I said in some previous Friday reads, the first-person narration in this book is some of the best first-person narration that I've read in years, and I will probably try his next book if he and his editor drink more coffee and stay awake through the whole process of writing and editing the book. What drove me crazy was there was third-person chapters where characters were written in such incoherent ways, without any vividness. They didn't feel alive to me, which I hate, but also the things that they did made no sense. So, for example, and this guy's a pretty important character in the story, there's a mystery, not a typical mystery, not a genre mystery, but there's something mysterious that happens in the opening of the novel, the death of an old man under the care of old folks' home. And the characters involved in that tragedy, or was it a murder, I don't know, they are threaded throughout the novel. And one of them, he ends up becoming the director of this group home, this old folks' home. Art. The chapter 7 about him, chapter 6 was awful. It was one paragraph, and it was about 20 pages, and I just hated everything about it. And then, I can't remember who that was about, but then chapter 7 was back to Art. And he's got a girlfriend, and she's important in that mystery story. But their relationship makes absolutely no sense. And then he goes to another city in Australia, and we find out that he'd been talking on the phone to some man for several weeks, or for a certain amount of time, and he goes and meets him. Afterwards, he and Art went out to coffee, and then to Art's hotel, where they shared a bottle of wine and had intercourse. And I mean, just... first of all, that's just a bland, ridiculously boring, stupid sentence. They had intercourse? They had intercourse. Ooh, I need a cigarette. I mean, who puts the word intercourse into modern fiction? I mean, psychological textbooks for first-year university students, maybe, but... And then we never get, like, Art gay or bisexual? There was, like... Really? Oh, how fascinatingly narrated. And a bunch of stuff. There's some violence, sexual violence that doesn't make any sense. And it was just so off-putting because it didn't make any sense. There was no flow of a character that where these ridiculous plot twists made any sense. I hated it so much. I bailed at the 70% mark. What a waste, because this novel had a lot of potential. I have finished 3 books. This collection of short stories by Juna Barnes, they're all about 7 pages or 10 pages each. The Lydia Steptoe stories, that was the pen name Juna Barnes used to publish these in the early 1920s. 5 stars, probably my favorite of the Faber Stories series. And I didn't think Juna Barnes would be a writer for me. I absolutely loved it. There's a review to chatty video that Doris and I put up a couple days ago. Biggest surprise and the best of the bunch so far. I also finished, finally, Leonard and Hungry Paul by Ronan Hessian. It ended up being a 4-star read, but I'm not sure if that was a bit generous. I'm still processing it, so I'm not going to do a full review because I'm just too mixed up about it. It was absolutely delightful, and then the ending I thought really sucked, so I took off 1 star for a bad ending. I've talked about what I've loved. It's quirky. The characters are all kind of nice. They're flawed, but there's no dark characters. Everybody basically wants everybody else to be kind of happy, but lots of people don't really know how to help make each other happy. That's kind of the lives we all tend to lead. There aren't usually malevolent characters. And so I really appreciate that. There was a kind of a whiff of a Barbara Pym whimsicality to it, and just odd turns in the plot or in the characterological nuances that just filled me with joy. And then the ending. So, I mean, Leonard and Hungry Paul, I'm always calling him Pete. Leonard and Hungry Paul are 2 men. Their age, I don't think it's ever disclosed, but they seem like they could be at least 35, maybe even 40, both of them living at home with their parents. The story opens with Leonard's mother dying. But they single and kind of emotionally stunted. I thought Hessian did a wonderful job of showing that calling them emotionally stunted was not fair to them, and that they had rich inner lives that tended to be filled with deeply contemplative, quirky life philosophies based on, in the case of Hungry Paul, playing board games. And in the case of Leonard, he ghostwrites children's encyclopedias. Has a very active historical imagination, and there is a depth to both characters that I really appreciated because it was told in such a whimsically quirky way. But the ending, I thought it kind of really sucked. They both get confronted by women in their lives, and I'm not going to do any spoilers because I do think you should read this book. I seem to be the only one on Goodreads that had any problem with the ending, so maybe I need to reread it. But Leonard gets into a dating relationship, and he gets confronted by his girlfriend about something he was being very obtuse about. Hungry Paul gets confronted by his sister about, come on, grow up, get a job, move out of your parents' house, for God's sakes. The novel ends with both men confronting those women back and explaining their character flaws to them. And I thought that was just too much, so I'm going to say the dangerous word on BookTube this week. They were mansplaining. And if only one of them had done it, it would have been okay. But both men, and that's how the novel resolved itself. More than that, because I'm still not at peace with how I really feel about that. It wasn't like ridiculous. It wasn't at all misogynist. It was basic human psychological sort of insights, and there was a few too many psychological insights being shared amongst the characters. It started to feel a little Oprah-esque, but so those two things, it kind of had a TV movie ending. Disappointing. I only took 1 star off because of the utter delightfulness of everything else up until about the 80% mark, and of all the glowing reviews on Goodreads, nobody else seems to have had a problem with the ending. I wasn't outraged by it, but I was disquieted by it, and I'm still not sure how I ultimately feel about it. So, that happened. And I started and finished this book, Rachel Ferguson's The Brontes Went to Woolworths. I have a full review, 5-star read, but what I want to tell you is, with permission, I want to tell you about the misunderstanding happened about the buddy read. The buddy read was, Ange and I had scheduled it, and then we invited Heidi to join because she expressed interest in this book when I hauled it a couple months ago. So the 3 of us buddy read it, and Heidi said, yeah, I got the book from the library, I'm good to go, and Ange and I already had our copies, paper copies. we decided to do 6 chapters because they're short, really short chapters. It's a 190-page novel, and check in after every 6 chapters. So Heidi was ahead of the game, so she was the first person to check in. So again, note the title, The Brontes Went to Woolworths by Rachel Ferguson. And I hadn't quite finished the first 6, but I just wanted to hear the first 10 seconds of Heidi's message to see if she was liking it or not, because I was really liking it. And she said, I listened to the first 10 seconds of her Voxer message on audio, and she said, I really enjoyed the first 6 chapters of Our Spoons Came from Woolworths. And I froze. I thought, oh my God, I screwed up. I am buddy reading the wrong book. So I just sent a message that said, I thought we were buddy reading The Brontes Went to Woolworths by Rachel Ferguson. Our Spoons Came from Woolworths is by Barbara Commons. I think it was published around the same time, maybe a little bit later, British novel. And so Ange was in bed, or Ange was not around at that moment. So Heidi and I were trying to sort it all out, and I said, well, we're gonna have to wait to hear from Ange to break the tie. If she's also reading Our Spoons Came from Woolworths, well, then I will find that and read it too, but she'll break the tie. And then I went to Ange's TBR video for April, and in fact, she held this up. So poor Heidi. It's so easy to happen, right? The Brontes went to Woolworths. Our Spoons Came from Woolworths, same era. So she just got it a little bit mixed up. And she said the first 6 chapters of Our Spoons Came from Woolworths was really good. So we have all agreed that we're going to buddy read that one sometime soon. Anyway, I love this, and I don't need to go on about it. I've got a full review, and you can check that out, but I love this. So those are the books that I finished. I have started 2 books this week. I told you last week that I wouldn't promise anymore that I was going to start it, so of course this is the week that I started Bottled Goods by Sophie van Leeuwen. It's on the Women Prize long list. It's a Romanian story set in the communist Romanian era, and it's about a woman whose brother-in-law defects to the West, and so then the communist authorities are starting to persecute her and her husband, punish them, and torment them. I'm enjoying it. It's very choppy. I don't know how ultimately I'm going to feel, but I'm going with it for now. It's very readable. There is a resigned jocularity to the storytelling that reminds me of other Eastern European literature that I've read. And I'm enjoying that more as much as anything, but it's kind of a mess of a story. Very short chapters. Each chapter is about 2 or 3 pages. Breezy, but ultimately I'm not sure how I'm going to feel. This might end up being a bail. Much more enthusiastically and surprisingly, I have started for Aussie April, Robbie Arnott's Flames, Autumn 2018 debut. This is a buddy read with Anna Bailey Karras, Tina, and Joe Smith. We haven't started checking in with each other. The buddy read just started yesterday. When I hauled it, I read the opening page or the opening paragraph. I'll put a link to that because it was quite a striking opening to the novel, but also very maybe magical realist or something, fantasy, which made me nervous. And I think, in fact, that I started this at the perfect time after finishing this, because this has kind of magical, fantastical elements to it that I didn't hate, that I actually appreciated and enjoyed. And maybe that helped me to get into this one, because I think the opening of this novel is absolutely stunning. The writing is just gorgeous and pulls you right in, and it opens with, as that excerpt that I read showed, a man's mother dies and then comes back from the dead. They spread her ashes in the park, and so then she comes back with all the grasses that were growing in the park growing out of her body, and she has some unfinished business, so she walks around like a green Sasquatch for a few days. So, that's a bit of a challenge for Sean the Book Maniac to get into a story that starts that way, but I totally did. And then it moves into the next chapter, which I haven't finished, about, I think maybe it's the same man. Do I know that for sure? Actually, I don't know because the first chapter, now that I've double checked, the first chapter is first person. His name is not mentioned. But the second chapter is about a man named Carl who, with the help of his assistant and his best friend, a seal, hunts the biggest tuna fish off the coast of Australia. And they're called I think it's only within Australian jargon, one blood tuna. I don't know what, I couldn't really find what that was. But anyway, the biggest tuna. And the description of the hunting and the way that he and the seal bond, again, it's about animals. And I've been complaining about it. I was just riveted. So it's starting out really good. I hope it continues because what I read yesterday in the midst of a very busy day filled me with joy. I think that's it for what I've started, and I think I've got enough going on that is sufficient. In terms of what's coming up, this is another funny story. I had a buddy read scheduled to start this weekend with Lukash of Totally Pretentious. We were going to read Haji Murad, the novella by Tolstoy, an excerpt of which is one of the epigraphs. I think it is the epigraph for one of my very most favorite novels, A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara, and is about the same area, the Chechnyan area, but it's a historical novel. It was Tolstoy's last novel, apparently, and it's short, 200 pages. And Lukash and I had planned to buddy read it. We've had it on our calendars for months and months. So I checked in with him yesterday to say, did you want to start Friday or Saturday or whatever? Do it over 4 days or something. And he said that sounded good. Saturday, maybe, to start. Saturday my time, which is Friday his. And then he said, oh, by the way, I have the translation by the husband-wife team, Richard Prevere and Larissa Volahonsky. And he said, how about you? And so I have it on Scribd, and my ebook that I had access to on Scribd was a different translator. And I had a quick look at it. I wasn't overly fond of what I read. So, and I love what I've read of the translations by Prevere and Volahonsky. So I said, and I couldn't get it on Kindle, I couldn't get it from Amazon Prime immediately, so I said, gosh, can we put this off? I would like to get the same translation as you. I think it'll be so much better of a reading experience. And I can't get it, right immediately, so let's put it off. But here's my suggestion. Let's still buddy read something this weekend. So, Lukash, I want you to have a gander at your bookshelves. Choose 4 or 5 books of similar length, around 200 pages or less, and tell me about them. And whichever ones sound the most interesting to me that I can get, ebook, Scribd, whatever, let's do one of those instead. So that process was really fun, and we are going to be buddy reading, starting tomorrow, Jhumpa Lahiri's debut collection of short stories, Interpreter of Maladies, which won the Pulitzer. And I haven't read anything. I've read one little book about book covers that she wrote, but I haven't read any of Lahiri's fiction. And I have it on Scribd. So we're going to buddy read that this weekend instead. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've been wanting to read her for years, and now I will by this little fluke of the fact that the one translation wasn't available, and I didn't address my mind to even discussing translation with Lukash until late last night. So things have a way of working out. Doris and I will probably start another one of the Faber stories in the coming days, but I'm not sure which one. And in terms of my Aussie April TBR, the Indigenous novel, I think it's a novel, maybe it's a memoir, Swallow the Air by Tara June Winch. It's a short book. I may get started on that this week, I'm not sure. So yeah, it's been a pretty darn good reading week. I disgusted by what happened to the Turner novel, but otherwise feeling really invigorated by what's going on reading wise. Spring is here and the weather's great and the reading's good. How about where you are? Thanks for watching.